Have you ever spent countless hours drilling vocabulary flashcards, only to freeze completely when trying to actually speak a foreign language? That frustrating moment when your mind goes blank, despite weeks of dedicated study, isn't just discouraging. It's a sign that you've fallen victim to one of the most widespread myths in language learning. What if I told you that Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist renowned for his revolutionary learning techniques, discovered a method that could transform how you acquire languages forever? Has this ever happened to you? You've meticulously reviewed hundreds of flashcards, memorized conjugation tables, and studied grammar rules until your eyes burned. Yet when faced with a real conversation, those carefully memorized words seem to evaporate into thin air. This isn't a personal failure or lack of talent. It's the inevitable result of an outdated approach that our educational systems still cling to, despite overwhelming evidence against it. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Feynman identified something profound about our brains that most language courses completely ignore. We simply aren't wired to retain disconnected information. Those isolated vocabulary lists and grammar rules, they're actually working against your brain's natural learning mechanisms, not with them. Every flashcard session is essentially a battle against your own cognitive processes, a fight you're destined to lose. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform your approach to language learning. Feynman's method flips traditional language acquisition upside down, replacing memorization with something far more powerful: understanding through context. Instead of treating languages as collections of words to memorize, he approached them as living, interconnected systems of meaning that only make sense when experienced holistically. Think about how you learned your native language. Did anyone hand you vocabulary lists as a child? Of course not. You absorbed language naturally through immersion, through usage, through necessity, creating neural connections that tied words to meaning, context, and emotion. Feynman's brilliant insight was recognizing that we could recreate this natural acquisition process even as adults, bypassing the memorization trap entirely. What makes this approach particularly revolutionary is how it harnesses your brain's existing learning pathways instead of fighting against them. When you experience a language as an interconnected system rather than isolated pieces, something remarkable happens in your neural circuitry. Words become anchored to concepts, emotions, and real-world applications, rather than floating disconnected in your short-term memory. The difference between traditional flashcard methods and Feynman's approach is like the difference between memorizing individual puzzle pieces versus seeing the complete picture. One leaves you struggling to recall disconnected fragments. The other creates a cohesive mental framework that grows stronger with each new addition. But how exactly does this revolutionary method work in practice? What specific techniques can you start implementing today to transform your language learning journey? The key to Feynman's revolutionary approach lies in active engagement from day one. Instead of the traditional mindset of learn now, speak later, his method demands immediate application. The moment you learn a new word or phrase, you should attempt to use it, speak it, write it, incorporate it into a sentence, no matter how basic your vocabulary might be. This isn't just about practice, it's about a fundamental transformation in how your brain processes language. When you actively engage with a language, even with rudimentary skills, something remarkable happens behind the scenes in your neural architecture. You're no longer storing information in your easily overwhelmed short-term memory. Instead, you're creating neural pathways that strengthen with each use, embedding the language into your procedural memory. The same type of memory that allows you to ride a bicycle without consciously thinking about balancing. This revelation completely shifts our understanding of what fluency actually means. Contrary to popular belief, fluency isn't about mastering perfect grammar or acquiring an extensive vocabulary. It's about communicative confidence, the ability to express yourself effectively despite limitations. Native speakers don't use their language perfectly. They use it confidently. This mindset shift alone can liberate you from the paralysis that prevents so many language learners from ever attempting real conversations. The journey becomes particularly powerful when we apply Feynman's approach to what most learners consider their biggest obstacle: grammar. Traditional courses present grammar as a labyrinth of rules, exceptions, and special cases that must be memorized before you can speak correctly. But Feynman discovered a hidden truth that dramatically simplifies this process. When encountering complex grammatical structures, Feynman applied his famous simplification principle. If you can't explain something in simple terms, you don't truly understand it yet. Rather than memorizing conjugation tables for Spanish verbs or Japanese particle usage, identify the underlying patterns and core principles. Take the subjunctive mood in Romance languages, for instance. Instead of viewing it as a complex set of rules to memorize, understand it as simply expressing uncertainty, emotion, or hypothetical situations. This mental shift from complexity to simplicity has a profound impact on your learning curve. By mastering basic patterns first, you create mental frameworks that naturally accommodate more complex concepts later. Just as you build your native language skills progressively, starting with simple sentences before incorporating sophisticated expressions, Feynman's approach honors this natural progression. The decisions you make in those early stages of learning have ripple effects throughout your entire language journey. By simplifying complex structures into digestible components, you're not just making grammar easier to understand. You're fundamentally changing how your brain processes and integrates new information. This creates a snowball effect where each new concept builds upon a solid foundation rather than floating disconnected in your memory. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how Feynman leveraged our brain's natural connection-making abilities to bypass the memorization process entirely. If you've ever experienced that moment when grammar finally clicked for you after struggling for weeks, write in the comments, "Simplicity unlocked my progress." One of the most profound revelations in Feynman's method is something that challenges conventional wisdom about effective learning. The most powerful technique in his approach isn't studying, it's teaching. This insight creates a paradigm shift in how we approach language acquisition. When you attempt to explain a concept to someone else, even with limited vocabulary, a remarkable transformation occurs in your cognitive processing. The act of articulation forces your brain to organize information in a coherent way, instantly revealing any gaps in your understanding. Think about it. Have you ever thought you understood something perfectly until you tried to explain it to someone else? That moment of struggle isn't a failure. It's a precise diagnostic tool showing you exactly where your knowledge needs reinforcement. This creates an incredibly efficient feedback loop that traditional study methods simply cannot match. What's particularly revolutionary about this teaching technique is that you don't actually need a student. You can explain concepts to an imaginary person, talk to your pet, or simply articulate your understanding out loud to yourself. The cognitive benefits come from the articulation process itself. This behind-the-scenes secret has been used by many polyglots who seem to absorb languages with unusual speed. They're constantly teaching what they learn, even when no one is listening. This approach completely reshapes your learning journey. Instead of reviewing everything indiscriminately, you can focus your energy precisely where it matters most. The insight doesn't stop there, though. Feynman's method contains another mindset revelation that liberates language learners from their biggest obstacle, the fear of making mistakes. In traditional education, errors are treated as failures to be avoided at all costs. This creates a paralyzing anxiety that prevents countless learners from ever attempting real conversations. Feynman turned this perspective completely upside down. He recognized that mistakes aren't failures. They're the most precise feedback mechanism possible. When you make an error in conversation, it isn't a reflection of inadequacy. It's a personalized signpost pointing exactly where your understanding needs reinforcement. This shift in perspective doesn't just impact your learning efficiency. It transforms the entire emotional landscape of your language journey. Consider this hidden truth. Fluent speakers aren't those who never make mistakes. They're the ones who've made thousands of errors and learned from each one. By tracking patterns in your mistakes, you create something invaluable, a personalized curriculum that focuses precisely on your unique learning needs. No textbook or app can provide this level of customization. If you found these language learning insights valuable, hit that subscribe button and join our community of learners who are transforming how they approach new languages. The deeper psychology at work involves recognizing that language acquisition isn't a linear process, but a spiral of continuous refinement. Each error correction cycle brings you closer to natural fluency in a way that no amount of theoretical study ever could. This approach creates a positive feedback loop where conversations become opportunities for growth rather than tests to pass or fail. Now let me share a personal revelation that completely changed my approach to language learning when I first encountered the intimidating structure of Japanese grammar. If you've ever felt that moment of liberation when you realized mistakes weren't failures but stepping stones, type in the comments, "Mistakes are my teachers." So, there you have it. Feynman's revolutionary approach that transforms language learning from a tedious memory exercise into an intuitive, natural process. What I love most about this method is how it works with your brain's natural learning mechanisms instead of against them, making the journey not just more effective, but genuinely enjoyable. If you found value in these insights today, I'd love to have you join our community of language learners and lifelong students. Hit that subscribe button so we can continue exploring these powerful learning techniques together. Our channel is dedicated to uncovering these kinds of transformative approaches that challenge conventional wisdom and deliver real results. I'm curious, did any of these techniques resonate particularly strongly with you? If you made it all the way through and plan to implement Feynman's method in your own language learning journey, drop a comment saying, "Ready to teach what I learn." Your insights not only help me create better content, but also inspire others facing similar challenges. That like button is there for a reason. If this approach shifted your perspective on language learning even a little bit, giving the video a thumbs up helps others discover these techniques too. And I genuinely appreciate that connection. Speaking of connections, I've created a video right here on how to create immersive learning environments at home, even if you can't travel to a country where your target language is spoken. It pairs perfectly with Feynman's method and might be exactly what you need to accelerate your progress. Click and continue the conversation with me over there. I think you'll find it equally valuable for your language learning transformation.